The Woman Who Vanished from Every Photograph, an original mystery story. When Margaret Hale died, her granddaughter found more than old furniture inside the house. She found a family mystery. In every photograph taken before 1978, Margaret was there, smiling beside her husband, holding her newborn son, standing in front of the old blue farmhouse in Vermont. But in every photograph taken after 1978, Margaret had vanished. Not physically. She had lived for 40 more years. People remembered her. They spoke with her. They ate at her table. They heard her laugh. But cameras never captured her again. Wherever she stood, there was only empty space. Her granddaughter, Lily, discovered it while cleaning the attic. At first, she thought the old photos were damaged. In one picture, the family stood around a Christmas tree. Everyone was visible except Margaret. There was a gap beside the fireplace, shaped almost exactly like a person. In another, relatives sat at a picnic table. Margaret's chair was empty, but her plate was full. Her shadow lay across the grass. The strangest photo showed Margaret's birthday party in 1989. The cake floated slightly above the table, as if held by invisible hands. Lily stared at it for a long time. Then she found the note. It was tucked inside the back of an old photo album. Written in Margaret's careful handwriting, "If I am gone from the pictures, it means the house has started remembering me wrong." Lily had grown up hearing family stories about Margaret. She was kind, quiet, patient. A woman who made blueberry pie every Sunday and wrote letters to relatives no one else remembered. But no one had ever mentioned the photographs. When Lily asked her mother, the room went silent. Her mother took the album, closed it, and whispered, "Some things your grandmother asked us not to explain." Lily looked at her. Why? Because explaining makes it stronger. That night, Lily stayed in Margaret's old room. Rain tapped against the windows. The farmhouse creaked softly in the wind. At 2:14 a.m., Lily woke to the sound of a camera shutter. Click. She sat up. The room was dark. Click. A flash of light appeared beneath the door. Someone was in the hallway. Lily grabbed her phone and opened the door. The hallway was empty, but on the floor lay a photograph. Fresh, wet with developing chemicals. It showed Lily asleep in bed, and beside her, standing near the window, was a blurred woman with no face. The next morning, Lily searched the attic again. Behind boxes of quilts, she found a locked trunk. The key was hidden inside Margaret's sewing kit. Inside were dozens of cameras, Polaroids, Brownie cameras, old Kodaks, disposable cameras, all broken. Each one had a small label tied to it, failed. At the bottom of the trunk was Margaret's diary. The entries began in 1978, the year she first disappeared from photographs. Margaret had written that the first missing picture happened during the town harvest festival. Everyone laughed at the empty space where she should have been. They thought the film had been ruined. But a week later, it happened again. Then again. No mirror was affected. No person forgot her. Only cameras refused to keep her. Margaret wrote, "It is not that I cannot be photographed. It is that something removes me before the image becomes memory." Lily read deeper into the diary. In 1978, Margaret had taken a job cleaning the old Whitcomb house, an abandoned mansion near the edge of town. The Whitcombs had been one of Vermont's wealthiest families in the early 1900s. Their house was famous for its portrait room. Every family member had been painted or photographed and displayed along a long upstairs hallway. But one portrait had always been covered, the portrait of Eleanor Whitcomb, a woman who had vanished in 1911, not from the house, from every record. Her birth certificate faded, her letters turned blank. Her name disappeared from newspapers. Finally, even her own family claimed they could not remember her face. Only one portrait remained hidden beneath a black cloth. Margaret had uncovered it while cleaning. The diary entry ended with one sentence. "I think Eleanor saw me looking." Lily drove to the Whitcomb house before sunset. The mansion stood behind iron gates, surrounded by dead vines and tall grass. No one had lived there for decades. The front door was unlocked. Inside, dust covered everything. The portrait hallway was exactly as Margaret described. Paintings lined the walls, stern men, elegant women, children in old-fashioned clothing. At the end of the hallway hung one frame covered by black cloth. Lily reached for it. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. She turned. No one. The cloth moved slightly, though there was no wind. Lily pulled it away. The portrait beneath was empty. A painted chair, a painted window, a painted hand resting on the armrest. But no woman. At the bottom of the frame, carved into gold, was the name, Eleanor Whitcomb. A whisper moved through the hallway. "She is not gone." Lily spun around. An old man stood near the staircase. He introduced himself as Arthur, the caretaker. His father had cared for the house before him, his grandfather before that. Arthur looked at the empty portrait. Eleanor was the first. "The first what?" Lily asked. "The first person the house tried to keep." Arthur explained that the Whitcomb family had hired a photographer in 1911 to take Eleanor's portrait before her wedding. The photographer used a strange glass plate camera brought from Europe. After the photograph was taken, Eleanor changed. She became quieter. Then people began forgetting details about her: her voice, her birthday, her handwriting. When the photograph was developed, Eleanor was missing from it. But her reflection remained in a window behind her chair. Weeks later, Eleanor vanished from every written record. The family covered the portrait room and never used the camera again. But the house had learned something. Images are not just pictures. They are proof that someone was here. And if that proof can be removed, a person can be slowly erased. Lily felt cold. Why Margaret? Arthur looked at her carefully. Because your grandmother found the camera. Back at the farmhouse, Lily searched the trunk again. Beneath the broken cameras was a wrapped object, a glass plate camera. Black wood, brass lens, cold to the touch. A label in Margaret's handwriting read, "Do not open the shutter." Lily nearly dropped it. Then her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. It contained a family photo taken that afternoon. Everyone stood outside Margaret's house. Lily was in the center, but her face was blurred. Not completely gone, not yet. The house had started taking her too. Lily opened Margaret's final diary. The last pages explained everything. Margaret had spent years fighting the erasure. She refused to let people forget Eleanor. She wrote Eleanor's name in notebooks, spoke it aloud every morning, placed labels under blank photographs. But every time she preserved Eleanor's memory, the camera took more of Margaret. By the end, Margaret knew she could no longer be photographed because she had become a shield. She was holding back the erasure from reaching the rest of the family. Her final entry read, "If I die, the camera will look for another witness. It will choose someone who asks too many questions. I am sorry, Lily." At midnight, the old camera opened by itself. The shutter clicked. Every light in the farmhouse went out. Photographs slid from albums and fluttered across the room. In each one, Margaret's empty spaces began to fill faintly. A shoulder, a hand, a smile. But as Margaret returned to the pictures, Lily began disappearing from them. Her childhood photos blurred. Her school pictures faded. Her reflection in framed glass became pale. The camera was trading one witness for another. Lily understood what had to be done. She gathered every photograph of Eleanor and Margaret, every diary, every name, every written memory. Then she returned to Whitcomb House with the camera in her arms. The portrait hallway was waiting. All the painted eyes seemed to follow her. At the end, Eleanor's empty portrait glowed faintly. Lily placed the camera on the floor and opened Margaret's diary. Then she began reading aloud. Eleanor Whitcomb, born April 9th, 1889, loved violin music, hated black tea, planted white roses near the east window, wanted to see the ocean. She read every detail Margaret had saved. Then she read Margaret's life. Margaret Hale, born in winter, married Thomas Hale, made blueberry pie, kept letters, remembered people no one else remembered. With each sentence, the hallway changed. The blank portrait darkened. A face appeared. First, Eleanor's eyes, then her hair, then her full figure seated in the painted chair. Across the photographs scattered on the floor, Margaret slowly returned, smiling, laughing, holding Lily as a baby. The camera began shaking. Its brass lens cracked. A voice whispered from inside it. "Someone must be forgotten." Lily answered, "No, someone must be remembered." She lifted the camera and smashed it against the stone floor. A burst of white light filled the hallway. Every portrait shook. The house groaned. Windows shattered inward without wind. Then silence. When Lily opened her eyes, the camera was broken into pieces. The empty portrait was no longer empty. Eleanor Whitcomb sat there clearly, looking out with calm, sad eyes. Beneath her name appeared 4 new words carved into the frame. She was always here. Lily returned home at dawn. Her mother was waiting on the porch, crying. In her hands was the Christmas photograph from 1989. Margaret was visible again, sitting beside the fireplace, holding the cake, smiling as if she had never been gone. Lily checked her phone. Her own photos had returned too. Not perfectly. In some, her edges looked soft. But she was there, and that was enough. Months later, Lily published a small book about Eleanor Whitcomb and Margaret Hale. Most people read it as folklore, a gentle ghost story from rural Vermont. But in the back of the book, Lily printed the restored photographs. Eleanor in her portrait, Margaret at the picnic table, Margaret holding the birthday cake, Margaret standing proudly beside the blue farmhouse. Readers often said the pictures made them feel strangely sad, as if they were remembering someone they had never met. Today, the Whitcomb House has become a museum. The portrait hallway remains open to visitors. At the very end hangs Eleanor's portrait, uncovered at last. Beside it is a photograph of Margaret Hale, and beneath both frames, a brass plaque reads, "A person is not gone while someone still says their name." As for Lily, she still keeps a camera on her desk, a normal one, digital, ordinary, safe. But she rarely takes photographs casually anymore. She believes every picture is a promise a promise that someone stood there, that someone lived, that someone mattered. And sometimes, late at night, when rain taps against the windows, Lily hears a faint sound from the attic. Click, a camera shutter, then silence. But she is no longer afraid, because now, when she opens the family album, everyone is there. The end. The Town That Lost One Entire Day. An original mystery story. In the quiet town of Belhaven, Ohio, people remembered almost everything. They remembered the year the river flooded. They remembered the winter when the school roof collapsed. They remembered the old mayor's dog that used to sleep outside the courthouse. But there was one thing no one remembered. One whole day. 24 hours. Gone. It happened on a Tuesday in October. At least that was what the calendars said. People in Belhaven went to sleep on Monday night and woke up on Wednesday morning. The clocks were correct. The newspapers were dated Wednesday. Phones showed Wednesday. Television broadcasts said Wednesday. But no one in town could remember Tuesday. Not one person. Not the children, not the police, not the doctors, not the mayor. It was as if Tuesday had been gently removed from the world. At first, people thought it was a mistake, a software glitch, a power outage, a strange town-wide prank. But soon, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Cars were parked in places no one remembered driving. Dinners had been cooked and left untouched. Stores had made sales no cashier remembered. Security cameras showed nothing but white static for exactly 24 hours. And at the hospital, 3 babies had been born on Tuesday. Their parents remembered arriving on Monday night. They remembered waking on Wednesday morning. But the births themselves were missing from memory. Grace Miller was the only person who noticed one more detail. She was 29, a school librarian, and she kept careful journals. Every night before bed, she wrote exactly 1 page. On Monday night, she had written as usual. On Wednesday morning, she opened her journal and found Tuesday's page filled, in her own handwriting, but she had no memory of writing it. The page contained only 1 sentence. Do not let the town remember. Grace stared at the words for a long time. Her handwriting was unmistakable. The pressure of the pen, the shape of the letters, the small curve in her lowercase r. She had written it. But when? And why would she warn herself against remembering? That day, Belhaven became a town of questions. People gathered in the diner, at the church, outside the courthouse. Everyone had stories. A mechanic found oil on his hands but no memory of working. A teacher found lesson plans completed for a class she did not remember teaching. A young couple discovered a wedding license filed at town hall. They were engaged on Monday, married on Tuesday, and woke up Wednesday with rings on their fingers. No memory of the ceremony. By evening, state officials arrived. Doctors examined residents. Technicians tested the water supply. Scientists checked for gas leaks. Police searched for evidence of a crime. No explanation appeared. Then came the strangest discovery. No one outside Belhaven had lost Tuesday. The rest of the world remembered it perfectly. Only the town had forgotten. Grace returned to the library after sunset. She believed answers might be hidden in old town records. Belhaven had always been a strange place. Founded in 1899, built beside a river that changed course twice. surrounded by hills where radio signals sometimes failed. In the basement archives, she found a box labeled October Incidents. Inside were old newspaper clippings, 1909, 1910, 1911, 1912. Each described a strange event in Belhaven. Missing hours, stopped clocks, people waking in unfamiliar places. But only one article matched the current mystery, from 1932. The headline read, "Belhaven loses a day. Town officials deny reports." Grace's hands went cold. This had happened before. The article described nearly the same event, an entire Tuesday missing, static on radios, clocks jumping forward, a handwritten warning found in the town library. Grace leaned closer. The warning from 1932 read, "Do not let the town remember." The same sentence. Behind the clipping was a photograph of the old library staff. 3 women stood outside the building. One of them looked exactly like Grace. Same face, same eyes, same small scar near the eyebrow. But the photograph was dated 1932. The name beneath the woman read, Clara Miller, Grace's great-grandmother.
That night, Grace called her mother. At first, her mother refused to discuss it. Then she cried. She admitted that the women in their family had always kept journals, not for memories, for warnings. Grace drove to her mother's house and found a trunk in the attic. Inside were dozens of notebooks, Clara's, her grandmother's, her mother's. Every few decades, the same phrase appeared: "The town forgets to survive." The earliest journal belonged to Clara Miller. It told a story Grace had never heard. When Belhaven was founded, workers discovered a sealed chamber beneath the hill where the library now stood. Inside was a circular stone room covered in strange carvings. At the center stood an iron clock with no hands. The founders called it a curiosity. Then the disappearances began. Small at first, minutes, hours. People forgot conversations, lost time. Then, in 1909, the town remembered something it was not supposed to. Clara never wrote exactly what it was, only that remembering it nearly destroyed them. The town panicked. People turned against each other. Families broke apart. And then, Tuesday disappeared. When everyone woke on Wednesday, the fear was gone. So was the memory. The town had been saved by forgetting. Grace read until dawn. Her family had guarded the secret ever since. Every generation, when the forgotten day returned, one Miller woman would remember just enough to prevent the town from digging too deeply. But Grace had already begun, and the more she searched, the more Tuesday started coming back. The first memory returned at noon. Grace was standing in the library when she suddenly smelled smoke. Not real smoke, a memory. She saw herself on Tuesday night, running through the town square. People were gathered around the courthouse. The sky above Belhaven was dark purple, filled with silent lightning. Someone was shouting, "Don't open the hill!" Then the memory vanished. Grace dropped to her knees. More memories followed. A police officer remembered standing guard outside the library basement. A doctor remembered treating people who had no injuries but could not stop screaming. The mayor remembered signing an evacuation order. By sunset, the entire town was beginning to remember pieces of Tuesday. And with every memory, the weather changed. Clouds gathered over Belhaven. Streetlights flickered. Every clock in town began ticking loudly. Even digital clocks. Tick, 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 as if something beneath the town had started counting again. Grace knew where she had to go, the library basement.
Behind the old archive shelves, she found a stone door that had not been there before. Carved into it were the same words from her journal: "Do not let the town remember." The door opened when Grace touched it. A staircase led down into darkness. Below the library was the chamber Clara had described: circular stone walls, ancient carvings, cold air, and at the center, an iron clock with no hands. But now the clock was ticking, loudly. At its base lay Tuesday, not as a day on a calendar, as objects. A child's red mitten, a wedding bouquet, a police badge, a broken coffee mug, a hospital bracelet. Thousands of pieces from the missing day floated slowly in the air, each one holding a memory. Then Grace saw herself, not a reflection, a version of herself from Tuesday, standing beside the clock, pale, exhausted, waiting. Tuesday. Grace spoke first. "You came too soon." Grace could barely breathe. "What happened?" Tuesday. Grace looked upward toward the town. "They found the chamber." "Who?" "Everyone." On Tuesday morning, construction workers repairing the library foundation had broken into the underground room. News spread quickly. By afternoon, half the town had come to see it. When the iron clock began ticking, people started remembering impossible things. Not their own memories, the town's memories. Every secret, every lie, every grief, every betrayal, every loss. Belhaven had hidden for more than a century. People remembered what neighbors had concealed, what families had buried, what officials had covered up. The truth came all at once. Too much, too fast. By nightfall, Belhaven was tearing itself apart, not because the truth was evil, but because no human heart was meant to hold every truth at the same time. So, Tuesday, Grace made a choice. She used the clock. She gave the town one day of forgetting, but the clock needed a keeper, someone to decide whether the memory should return. That someone was Grace. Grace whispered, "So I erased a day." Tuesday, Grace shook her head. "You protected one. But people deserve the truth." Yes, not all at once. Above them, the town bells began ringing. The memories were escaping. The floating objects spun faster. Grace saw everything: the wedding, the babies being born, the courthouse panic, her own hands writing the warning, "Do not let the town remember." Now she understood. Forgetting was not always weakness. Sometimes it was mercy. But permanent silence was not justice either. Grace stepped toward the iron clock. "What do I do?" Tuesday, Grace smiled sadly. "Give the day back slowly." "How?" "Choose what must be remembered first." Grace closed her eyes. She thought of the parents who had lost the memory of their baby's birth, the couple who deserved to remember their wedding, the people who had said goodbye, the apologies made, the small kindnesses, the ordinary beauty of a missing day. She touched the hospital bracelet, then the wedding bouquet, then the red mitten. One by one, gentle memories rose from the chamber and drifted upward through the stone ceiling. Not the terrible secrets, not the overwhelming pain, only the human pieces, the things that helped people remain whole. By morning, Belhaven remembered Tuesday differently. Not completely, not dangerously, but enough. Parents remembered holding their newborns. The couple remembered saying their vows. The mechanic remembered helping a stranger fix a car. The teacher remembered her students laughing during a lesson. The town still did not remember the panic beneath the library, and maybe that was for the best. The chamber sealed itself before sunrise. The iron clock stopped ticking.
Grace returned to the library and found her journal open on the desk. Tuesday's warning had changed. Now it read, "Let the town remember gently." Years passed. Bellhaven never lost another full day. Every October, the town held a quiet festival called Remembering Tuesday. People wrote down one memory they were grateful for and placed it in a wooden box outside the library. No one knew exactly why the tradition began, but everyone respected it. Grace became the library director. She kept the old journals locked beneath her desk, not to hide the truth forever, but to protect it until the town was ready. Sometimes, visitors asked about the strange clock carved into the library floor. Grace would smile and say it was part of local history. That was true, just not all of it. And on certain quiet nights in October, when the building settled and the wind moved softly through the streets, Grace could hear a faint ticking beneath the floor. Not threatening, not urgent, only patient, as if time itself were waiting. Waiting for people to understand that memory is powerful, truth is powerful, and sometimes the kindest thing a town can do is remember slowly. The end.
The Camera That Photographed Tomorrow, an original mystery story. When Emily Carter inherited her grandfather's camera shop, she expected dust, broken lenses, and unpaid bills. She did not expect to find a camera that could photograph tomorrow. The shop stood on a quiet street in Portland, Oregon, between an old bookstore and a closed movie theater. Its sign was faded. Its windows were cloudy, and inside, hundreds of forgotten cameras sat on wooden shelves like sleeping eyes. Emily's grandfather had repaired cameras for 50 years. Film cameras, Polaroids, old folding cameras, anything with glass, gears, and memory. After he died, Emily returned only to clean the place out and sell it. But on her first night there, she found the locked cabinet. The cabinet stood behind the repair counter. Inside was a black leather camera case. No brand name, no serial number. Only a silver plate on the front that read, "Do not load after midnight." Emily smiled at the warning. It sounded exactly like her grandfather's sense of humor. Inside the case was an old instant camera, heavier than it should have been. The lens was cold. The shutter button was silver, and taped to the back was one unused film pack. Emily loaded it without thinking. The shop clock read 12:03 a.m. She raised the camera toward the empty shop and pressed the button. Click. The camera hummed softly. A photograph slid out. At first, the image was black. Then shapes appeared. The counter, the shelves, the front window. But something was wrong. The photo showed the shop in daylight, and the front window was shattered. Emily looked up. The window in front of her was perfectly fine. She told herself the old film had malfunctioned. Then morning came. At 9:16 a.m., a delivery truck lost control on the wet street and clipped a mailbox. The mailbox flew through the shop window. Glass covered the floor exactly as the photograph had shown. Emily stood behind the counter, staring at the picture in her hand. The camera had not photographed the shop. It had photographed tomorrow. That night, Emily tested it again. She waited until after midnight, loaded another sheet, pointed the camera toward the street. Click. The picture developed slowly. It showed a woman dropping a red umbrella into a storm drain. The next afternoon, Emily watched from the shop window as the same woman walked past. A gust of wind turned the umbrella inside out. The woman lost her grip. The red umbrella slid into the drain, exactly like the photo. Emily's hands trembled. The camera worked, not always clearly,
Not always completely, but it showed one moment from the next day. At first, Emily used it carefully. A photograph showed smoke rising from the bookstore next door. She warned the owner to check the wiring. The fire never happened. Another photo showed an elderly man slipping outside the pharmacy. Emily salted the sidewalk before dawn. He walked safely across it. A third showed a child crying alone at a bus stop. Emily called the school, and the child's mother was reached in time. The camera seemed like a gift, a strange, impossible gift. For the first time in months, Emily felt useful. Her grandfather's shop no longer felt like an inheritance. It felt like a purpose. But then the photographs began changing. When Emily prevented the bookstore fire, the next picture showed a kitchen fire 3 blocks away. When she stopped the old man from falling, another image showed someone else being loaded into an ambulance. When she helped the child at the bus stop, the next photograph showed a missing poster for a different child. Emily began to understand. Tomorrow could be changed, but it did not like being changed. Every avoided disaster left behind a shadow. Every saved moment moved danger somewhere else. She searched through her grandfather's notebooks for answers. In a locked drawer beneath his workbench, she found an old leather journal. The first page read, "The camera does not show the future. It shows the debt." Her grandfather had discovered the camera in 1974. For years, he used it the same way Emily did. Quiet warnings, small rescues, accidents avoided, lives changed. But slowly, he learned the rule. The camera never gave a free picture. If it revealed tomorrow, tomorrow demanded to be seen. If one image was prevented, another appeared. The final journal entry was dated 3 days before his death. It read, "Do not try to save everyone. The lens will choose someone you love." The next midnight, Emily did not use the camera. She locked it in the cabinet, turned off the lights, went upstairs to her apartment. But at 12:03 a.m., she heard it. Click. The sound came from downstairs. She ran to the shop. The cabinet was open. The camera sat on the counter. A photograph was developing beside it. Emily had not taken it. The image appeared slowly. Her breath stopped. It showed her younger brother, Noah, standing at a train platform. Behind him, a dark blur moved along the tracks. The station clock in the photograph showed 5:42 p.m. Tomorrow. Emily called Noah immediately. He lived across the city and took the train home from work every evening. She begged him not to go to the station the next day. He laughed at first, then grew concerned. "Em, are you okay?" "Please, just promise me." He agreed. But the next day at 5:10 p.m., Noah called her. His car had broken down. He needed to take the train after all. Emily grabbed her coat and ran. The station was crowded. Rain fell across the platform. Emily arrived at 5:39. She saw Noah near the yellow line, exactly as in the photo. The dark blur was approaching. Not a person, a loose metal panel from a passing maintenance cart. It broke free and skidded toward the platform edge. Emily shouted. Noah turned. She pulled him backward just in time. The panel struck the ground where he had been standing. Noah stared at her, pale and shaken. "You knew." Emily could not answer. She only hugged him tightly. That night, the camera waited on the counter again. Emily wanted to smash it, but beside it lay another photograph. This one showed the camera shop, burning. Inside the doorway stood Emily. Behind the flames, on the back wall, a shadow shaped like her grandfather watched. The time on the shop clock was midnight. Not tomorrow afternoon, not morning. Midnight, only minutes away. The lights flickered, the front door locked by itself. Every camera on the shelves turned toward her. Old lenses, broken lenses, glass eyes, watching. The instant camera hummed softly. A final photograph slid out. This image was different. It showed Emily as an old woman, still inside the shop, still taking pictures. A wall behind her was covered with thousands of photographs of disasters she had tried to prevent. The future had not killed her. It had trapped her, just as it had trapped her grandfather, not physically, but with responsibility. One picture at a time, one warning at a time, forever. Emily opened her grandfather's journal again, desperate. On the last page, beneath the warning, she found writing she had missed. The camera can only be stopped by taking one honest photograph. Below that, another line. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, now. Emily finally understood. The camera had never shown the present. It fed on fear of what might happen. The only way to break its hold was to photograph something as it truly was. Not a warning, not a possibility, a real moment. The shop clock struck midnight. Smoke began rising from the floorboards. The camera lens opened by itself. Emily picked it up. Her hands shook. Every instinct told her to point it toward the future, toward the fire, toward danger. Instead, she turned the camera around, toward herself. Noah's rainwater still stained her coat. Her eyes were red from fear. Her hands trembled. She was not a hero, not a prophet, not someone who could control tomorrow. Just a woman standing in an old camera shop, finally willing to face the present. She pressed the shutter. Click.
The flash filled the room with white light. The smoke vanished. The locked door opened. The cameras on the shelves turned back to ordinary objects. The instant photograph developed slowly in her hand. For the first time, it did not show tomorrow. It showed Emily exactly as she was. Tired, afraid, alive. On the bottom border, words appeared in her grandfather's handwriting. That is enough. The camera cracked down the center, its lens clouded over. The film pack burned to ash without flame. After that night, the camera never worked again. Emily kept it in the shop window, not as a tool, but as a reminder. She reopened her grandfather's business and began repairing cameras for people who still believed memories mattered. Noah visited often. The bookstore owner brought coffee every morning. The old pharmacy customer waved whenever he passed. Life continued, uncertain, ordinary, beautiful. Years later, a young photographer entered the shop and noticed the cracked camera in the display case. "What happened to that one?" he asked. Emily smiled. "It took the only picture it was ever supposed to take." "Can it be fixed?" "No," she said gently. "And that's a good thing." The photographer laughed, assuming it was just an old shop story. Most people did. But sometimes, just after midnight, the cracked lens caught the light in a strange way. And for 1 second, it seemed to show an image that had not happened yet. A road, a storm, a stranger at a window. Then the image vanished. Emily never looked too long. She had learned the lesson her grandfather tried to leave behind. Tomorrow will always arrive, sometimes softly, sometimes painfully, sometimes with gifts, sometimes with loss. But it belongs to itself. And no camera, no warning, no photograph can make life safe enough to stop being lived. So every morning, Emily opened the shop. She cleaned the windows, repaired what could be repaired, let broken things remain broken when they needed to be. And whenever someone asked why she loved old cameras, she always gave the same answer.
because they remind us to notice what is here. Not tomorrow, not what might happen, not what we fear losing, but this moment. The light on the floor, the face across the room, the breath before the shutter closes. Because sometimes the most important picture is not the one that shows the future. It is the one that reminds us we are still here. The end.
The abandoned post office that still receives letters. An original mystery story. At the edge of a quiet town in northern Vermont stood a small brick post office that had been closed for 37 years. Its windows were dusty. Its front steps were cracked. The flagpole outside had no flag. And above the locked wooden door, faded letters still read, Millbrook Post Office, 1939. No clerk worked there. No truck stopped there. No one had mailed a letter from that building in decades. And yet, every winter morning, fresh letters appeared inside. The town of Millbrook did not speak about the post office. Children were told not to play near it. Visitors were told it was unsafe. And every year when someone suggested tearing it down, the town council refused without explanation. Most people believed it was just another abandoned building, but Sarah Lane knew better. Sarah was 29, a history writer from Boston. After her grandmother died, she returned to Millbrook to clean out the old family house. Inside a drawer beside the fireplace, she found a small brass key tied to a faded red ribbon. Attached to it was a note in her grandmother's handwriting. For the old post office, do not open after sunset. Sarah laughed at first. It sounded like the beginning of a ghost story. But the next morning before sunrise, she walked to the abandoned post office with the key in her coat pocket. The street was empty. Snow covered the sidewalks. The building stood silent beneath the pale gray sky. Sarah unlocked the door. It opened with a soft wooden groan. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Old mailboxes lined one wall. A sorting counter stood beneath dusty lamps. A calendar from 1987 still hung behind the desk. Then, Sarah heard it. A soft sound. Paper sliding across wood. She turned toward the counter. A fresh, white envelope was lying there. Her name was written on the front. Sarah Lane. With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside was a short letter. Dear Sarah, if you are reading this, then the route has passed to you. Deliver the first letter before sunset. Do not read what is not addressed to you. And never ignore a letter marked in blue. There was no signature. Only another envelope beside it. This one was addressed to Mr. Henry Cole, 14 River Street. Sarah knew that name. Henry Cole was the oldest man in Millbrook. He had lived alone since his wife passed away 25 years earlier. Sarah should have left the letter on the counter. Instead, she delivered it. Henry opened the door slowly. When he saw the envelope, his face changed. Where did you get that? The old post office. He took it with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter from his wife. Not a long letter, just a few lines. A memory of their first dance. An apology for the argument they never solved. And one final sentence. Please stop setting 2 cups at the table, Henry. I am at peace. The old man sat down on the porch steps and cried quietly. Sarah stood in the snow, unable to speak. The handwriting was real. The words were too personal to be a prank. And for the first time in years, Henry Cole smiled. After that, Sarah returned to the post office every morning. And every morning, a new letter waited. Some were addressed to living people, some to people who had moved away, some to names Sarah could only find on gravestones. She delivered them all. A father apologized to a daughter. A missing brother explained why he left. A mother said goodbye to a child who had blamed himself for too long. Each letter healed something small in the town. A phone call was made. A door was opened. A grave received fresh flowers. Millbrook slowly began to change, not loudly, not all at once, but like snow melting from a roof, quietly, drop by drop. Then came the blue letter. It appeared on the 12th morning. The envelope was pale blue. No address, only one sentence. Deliver this to the person who has waited longest. Sarah carried it through town all day. She asked the librarian, the mayor, the priest. No one knew what it meant. As sunset approached, the envelope grew colder in her hand. The windows of the old post office began glowing from the inside. Sarah suddenly understood. The person who had waited longest was not alive. She walked to the cemetery and found a grave beneath an old pine tree. Elias Ward, postmaster, 1901 to 1987. She placed the blue letter on the snow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the envelope opened by itself. A warm wind moved through the cemetery, and from the direction of the post office, a bell rang once. Though Sarah knew the building had no working bell,
that night she searched the town archives. Elias Ward had been Millbrook's last postmaster. In the winter of 1987, a blizzard trapped the town for 5 days. Phone lines went down. Roads vanished beneath snow. The only communication left was mail already sitting inside the post office. Elias refused to let the letters remain undelivered. He walked through the storm, delivering messages house by house. Medicine notices, military letters, family news. One final birthday card for a child whose father was stuck in another state. By morning, every letter had been delivered. But Elias never returned. They found his empty mailbag on the post office steps. The building closed 1 month later, yet the letters continued. Sarah read the article 3 times. Then she noticed a photograph. Elias stood beside the sorting counter, smiling. Behind him, half hidden on the wall, was a row of brass boxes. One box had a nameplate, Lane, her family name. Sarah returned to the post office before dawn. Inside, she found the brass box exactly where it had been in the photograph. The key from her grandmother fit perfectly. Inside was a bundle of letters tied with red string, all written by her grandmother, all addressed to Sarah. The first letter began, "My dear Sarah, I was the carrier before you." Sarah read until the sun rose. Her grandmother had delivered the mysterious letters for 26 years. She had never told anyone. Not because she was afraid of ghosts, but because the letters were powerful. They gave people closure, but they also demanded sacrifice. Every delivery connected the carrier more deeply to the post office. Eventually, the carrier would begin receiving letters from the future. Letters warning of grief, accidents, regrets, things that might happen, things that might be prevented. Sarah's grandmother had stopped delivering after one final letter, a black envelope. She never wrote what it said, only one warning. If the black letter arrives, do not deliver it. Weeks passed. Sarah continued the route. She told herself she would stop before it became dangerous. But each morning, someone needed a letter. And each evening, she saw the difference it made. How could she walk away? Then, on the first day of February, the black envelope appeared. It lay alone on the sorting counter. No name, no address, no stamp. Only 4 words. To the next postmaster. Sarah did not open it. She remembered the warning. But the post office grew colder. Every brass mailbox opened at once. Whispers filled the room. Hundreds of voices.
some gentle, some desperate. Deliver it. Finish the route. Let us be heard. Sarah backed toward the door. Then a man spoke behind her. You should not have waited this long. She turned. An elderly man in a postal uniform stood behind the counter. His name tag read, E. Ward. Elias Ward looked exactly like the photograph. Kind eyes, snow-white hair, a leather mailbag over one shoulder. Sarah whispered, "You're the postmaster." I was. Who writes the letters? Elias looked around the room. The people who ran out of time. Sarah held up the black envelope. What is this? The last letter. What happens if I deliver it? The post office keeps working. And if I don't? Elias's expression softened. Then every undelivered word must finally let go.
Sarah understood why her grandmother had stopped. The post office was not evil. It was not cruel. It was full of unfinished love. But unfinished love can become a chain if no one lets it rest. The letters helped people heal, but they also kept the dead reaching back, again and again, forever. Sarah looked at Elias. Did you ever want to leave? The old postmaster smiled sadly. Every winter. Then why didn't you? Because someone always needed one more letter. Sarah carried the black envelope outside. Snow fell softly over Millbrook. The sun was close to setting. Behind her, the post office windows glowed brighter and brighter. Elias stood in the doorway. If you tear it, he said, there will be no more letters. Sarah looked at the town. At Henry Cole's house, where only one cup now sat on the table. At the church, where fresh flowers had begun appearing again. At the cemetery, where old graves were no longer forgotten. Then she looked at the envelope. Some words arrive to heal. Others remain because people are afraid to say goodbye. Sarah tore the black letter in half. The sound was soft, almost like a sigh. Then every mailbox in Millbrook opened at once. Letters rose into the winter sky. Hundreds of them, thousands. White envelopes glowing like small lanterns. They drifted above rooftops, above trees, above the old post office. For a moment, Sarah heard voices. Thank you. I'm sorry. I forgive you. I remember. Then the letters dissolved into snow. The post office bell rang one final time, and the lights inside went dark. The next morning, no letter appeared, nor the morning after that. Millbrook felt different, lighter. People could not explain why. They simply began doing things they had delayed for years. Calling relatives, visiting graves, opening boxes of old photographs, saying what needed to be said while there was still time. Sarah stayed in Millbrook. She restored the post office and turned it into a small museum. On the counter, she placed a wooden box where visitors could write letters they never planned to send. Letters to parents, old friends, lost loves, younger versions of themselves. The box was emptied every winter and burned in the town square. Not as destruction, as release. Years later, Sarah found one final envelope beneath the old sorting counter. It had no stamp, no address, only her name. Inside were 5 words in her grandmother's handwriting. You delivered the silence, too. Sarah smiled through tears. She placed the letter in a glass case beside Elias Ward's photograph, and above it, she wrote the sentence that became the museum's motto. No message is ever truly lost if the heart is ready to hear it. Today, the Millbrook Post Office no longer receives letters. At least, not the kind that appear by themselves.
But sometimes, on winter mornings, visitors hear paper sliding behind the old mail slot. When they look, nothing is there, only a feeling. Soft, warm, familiar, as if someone they once missed has finally found peace. And in a town that spent decades waiting for words from the past, that is enough. The end.